Yes, we are back, and we're on the phone right now. Bob Stelton, ESPN Radio 710 in Seattle. Bob, you are up extremely early for us this morning, so thank you for being with us. And, Bob, it's funny. As much as I love the Capital Region, usually I'm the one telling people that Seattle is the place I want to get to. I wish I could go on vacation to Seattle. I want to go to Safeco Field. I want to go to CenturyLink to see the Seahawks. Well, this weekend, I think it's you guys that wish you were out here in upstate New York, because I will be at the Ken Griffey Jr. induction ceremony at the Hall of Fame. Bob, what's the city's buzz like as juniors just one day away now from being enshrined?
The city is absolutely excited. It's like everybody's own child. It's the way it's being treated. Like, everybody's very proud. Their son has moved on and done great things, and they now get to sit back and watch everybody else praise something that they already knew was real, and that is one of the greatest players we've ever seen in Ken Griffey Jr. You're hearing countdowns and highlights and greatest moments. They've got the big countdown sign up at Safeco Field. I mean, it's a massive event. They're going to have Ken Griffey Jr. weekend at Safeco Field. You hear it on the radio stations, whether it's music or sports. It's a very big deal.
Bob, so what's it been like? Has there been a mass exodus from the Pacific Northwest? Did you expect that a lot of people are going to make this trip here as we're one day away from the Hall of Fame induction? Are we going to see a lot of Mariner fans from Seattle coming out?
Yeah, a lot of people I know are actually making plans to get out there, and I'm sure Cooperstown will be packed full of Mariner fans and Griffey jerseys and that whole thing. So I'm excited to see it. I'm sad I'm not going to be there, like you said. I'm jealous that I won't be there, but I think it's going to be. I think Seattle will be well represented.
Bob, I've seen Griffey play in person in his heyday in Seattle, but obviously a little too young to fully have appreciated it. A lot of what I remember now comes through YouTube and comes through old Mariner highlight videos, which are plentiful, and I do watch all the time, by the way. But what was it like for you going to the ballpark every day, live, seeing Griffey? What was that like?
It was, it's kind of like watching Tiger Woods in his prime, Michael Jordan in his prime, LeBron James now. You're watching something different. You're watching something special. And there's something really cool about that, because you see a lot of great players in any sport, right? It doesn't matter what sport you're watching. You'll see great players, but there's always, that element of a player that stands out that's just different than the rest. And sometimes it's hard to quantify, it's hard to explain, but you just know you're watching it. You're seeing something that isn't quite like the rest of what you're seeing. And that's what it felt like with Griffey. It felt like, man, he's going to do something special, whether it's out in the field, at the plate. He is just a little bit different than everybody else that's playing.
Bob Stelton, ESPN 710 in Seattle. We're getting ready for Ken Griffey Jr. and Mike Piazza's induction into the Baseball Hall of Fame. Bob, by all accounts, Griffey kind of a recluse. Not mean, but really just not a me guy. What do you expect from Griffey's speech tomorrow?
That'll be interesting, because you're exactly right. Especially, he was a guy that didn't like to talk after they won. But after a tough loss, he'd be the guy in there talking. And that was him being a leader. That was him sort of, saying, we got to discuss it. And I'll be that guy. I'll be the one to sort of take the slings and arrows. And when we win, go talk to the other guys. I'm not interested in talking about me. So he's a very shy guy, as much as he's been a superstar and in the spotlight since he was a teenager, incredibly shy. So I think he was sort of misunderstood on some levels. And he could be a little prickly. He could be a little tough at times, being a member of the media. He wasn't always the biggest sweetheart, and he's not unique in that sense. So I'll be very curious. He did a speech out here when he was inducted into the Mariners Hall of Fame, and he did the speech out here, and he went on for a long time, man. He had a lot to say. He kind of went stream of consciousness out there. So I don't think he's going to have any trouble filling up the time. He's got a lot of great memories and, some really heartfelt comments and things to say about guys that he played with and moments and playing with his dad, things like that. So I'm really looking forward to it. I think he's going to be great.
We had Jeff Idelson of the Baseball Hall of Fame on earlier this week on our weekday show with Roger Weiland, and we asked him if Griffey had wanted it, would the Hall of Fame have allowed him to have a backwards hat on his plaque? And Idelson said yes. Now, how would fans in the city of Seattle have felt about that? Would they have liked it because that's kind of what Griffey was known for? Or would they have been disappointed that you couldn't have seen the Mariners emblem on the front of the hat?
They would have loved it. They wouldn't have liked it. They would have loved it, because that's what made him unique. He was that guy. He was known for that. He got, some managers, I remember Sparky Anderson had an issue with it. Some of the old school guys thought it was some level of disrespect to see him out there taking batting practice with his hat backwards. But that was who he was. He was just the big kid. He was the kid, and he wore the hat backwards, had that huge smile. I think fans out here would have absolutely loved it. They would have had no issue with the logo not being represented.
Bob Stelton, ESPN 710 in Seattle, with us on Capital Region Sports Saturday, brought to you by Mohawk Honda, your #1 volume dealer in the Capital Region. Bob, you hit on a point there that I've been thinking about. I'm only 26 years old, and I've been very critical in the past of Bryce Harper and the way he plays the game, and a little too flashy, a little too showmanship for me. But now I've started to come around on that, and I really thought to myself that I was being hypocritical because I love the game in part because of the way Ken Griffey Jr. played it, and I wear my hat backwards because Ken Griffey Jr. did. It feels almost like the same type of deal to me between Griffey and Harper. Did Griffey get this kind of grief when he was first coming up?
No, he didn't. Like I said, there were some old school managers that had issues with it. Sparky Anderson's the one that comes to mind, and I know he wasn't alone, but he got a little bit of flack for it. But, I mean, listen, it's such a different time now with social media, and every moment of everybody's life is caught on film and pictures on video and immediately put out there for everybody to digest, right? So it's just everybody has more access to opinion. Everybody can express an opinion immediately. It's real time. It's Twitter. It's Instagram. It's such a different era now, and there's so much more media coverage. When Bryce Harper does something, we all hear about it seconds after it happened. We all see video of it seconds after it happened, and it's a talking point. There's so many more outlets for sports, and they got to fill time. They've got to come up with things to talk about, and that becomes a talking point. Hey, Bryce Harper, is he disrespecting the game? Is he too brash? Is he, So I just think it's such a different time now than when Ken Griffey Jr. was around.
Bob, as I've told you, I grew up in Seattle listening to Rick Riz and to Dave Niehaus, the longtime broadcaster for the Mariners who passed away in 2010 now, if I'm not mistaken. And he's a Hall of Famer, has won the Ford C. Frick Award for the best for Hall of Fame broadcaster. And a part of me is saddened that he won't be there on the day that Griffey gets inducted tomorrow. Is there any feeling in the city of sadness that Dave Niehaus isn't there next to Griffey?
Yeah, it comes up when we play the highlights. Right, when we play highlights of Junior's 8 consecutive games with a home run in each game, and you hear his calls, and you hear just the calls of him crashing into the fence and breaking his wrist, and so many brilliant calls from Dave Niehaus. So yeah, it comes up then. I think it would have been apropos. It would have been perfect to have Dave Niehaus out there, in the middle of that whole thing, because he was there from the beginning with Junior. He was there. Welcome to the big leagues, Ken Griffey Jr. with that first home run, things like that. So. It definitely comes up because Dave Niehaus is still, we talk about Junior being present out here, and he's obviously still with us. Dave Niehaus, even though he's not with us, is still incredibly present out here. You hear him all the time. Those calls are replayed. We play them all the time because he's one of the greatest ever. So it would have been great to have one of the greatest ever behind the mic talking about one of the greatest ever that were to play in the field.
Bob Stelton, ESPN 710 in Seattle, with us, Capital Region Sports Saturday, brought to you by Mohawk Honda, your #1 volume dealer in the Capital Region. And Bob, you mentioned that the city loves Griffey like a son, but his relationship with the city and with the media was truculent at times. How long did it take for the city to get over that? Or was it just as simple as when he came back to the Mariners a second time, all was forgiven?
That's exactly it. That was exactly it. There were people that were hurt when he left. They were, was hurt feelings as sort of a spurned lover, but he left to go home. He took less money to go home to Cincinnati. So I understood it. I was disappointed. He's the best player I've ever seen in person. He was my favorite player, but I didn't have a personal grudge. I didn't want bad things. I didn't want him to fail or anything like that. And I think some fans took it to that extreme. And we saw it again with Alex Rodriguez and things like that, Randy Johnson to a lesser extent. So, but when he came back, it was as if nothing had ever happened. And it was, hey, we've got one of the greatest to ever wear a uniform back on our roster, and we get to go see him every day.
Bob, I'm going to throw you for a loop here, a complete 180, and I'm looking over at producer Mariano, who's coming in next. Brian, can I ask him this one? Can I ask him a homer question? Yeah, all right. I'm in full homer mode here for the morning. So, Seattle fans, happy that Kevin Durant left Oklahoma City, a chance to stick it to Clay Bennett for moving the Sonics?
Yes, and yes. They couldn't be more gleeful. There were a lot of a lot of tweets coming out of Seattle of, and now you know how it feels, and, they want bad things to happen to the Thunder. And I've always, listen, Clay Bennett, what happens to him is of no concern to me. I hope for bad things for that franchise and him in particular. But the players, I never had an issue with. They had nothing to do with this. I rooted for Kevin Durant. And it was weird because it was a conflict. You didn't want the Thunder to do well per se for Clay Bennett, but Durant was very outspoken. He was very, very, very passionate about Seattle. So I always rooted for him. But I'm glad he's out of there because it doesn't present that conflict anymore. He could have gone to any other team; it wouldn't have mattered to me. I'd still pull for him if he were in a Thunder jersey, but it makes it much easier now that he's with Golden State. So yes, Seattle was very, very happy about that.
Bob Stelton, ESPN 710 in Seattle with us. Capital Region Sports Saturday brought to you by Mohawk Honda, your #1 volume dealer in the Capital Region. Bob, you were up early for us. Really appreciate it. It's just after 6:30 in the Pacific Northwest. Go back to bed, would you? Enjoy the induction from afar, and maybe I'll send you a picture or two. Thanks.
You got it. Anytime, man.